My name is Catherine Connelly. I'm a professor and Canada Research Chair of Organizational Behaviour at the DeGroote School of Business at McMaster University. So the Temporary Foreign Worker Program is an enormous program. If you look at last year alone, about 220,000 temporary foreign workers came to Canada. That's more than the population of Prince Edward Island. But there are actually 4 main streams in the Temporary Foreign Worker Program, and their experiences tend to be quite different. So we have the agricultural workers in the SOP program, we have in-home caregivers, and then there's also low-wage workers and high-wage workers. Over the years, we've seen this constant tension between businesses asking for more flexibility and being able to hire more and more workers, and then different groups in society say, no, this is actually not something that we want to overdo, and we want to maybe have some more restrictions and regulations on these programs. For the agricultural workers, the most agricultural businesses would not survive without these workers. They really depend on them. Hospitality, tourism, industrial butchers, all these things, it's almost impossible to imagine these industries with 0 temporary foreign workers. It's hard to think of a sector that does not have temporary foreign workers involved in it. Everything from web design to growing tomatoes to accountants to security guards, like you name it. There are workers who are in these industries who are temporary foreign workers. So it's a really broad program at this stage. Many temporary foreign workers who come are excellent workers. They have a lot of experience, really well trained, and they're often more than a little bit overqualified for the work that they're doing. And so when they show up, maybe their job is you're supposed to only do this, but actually they're expected to do this and that and the other thing, and you have to do it at night, and I'm not going to pay you for your overtime or holiday pay or any of these extra things. So they're often held to an impossible standard compared to their Canadian colleagues, and it's really not fair. I talked to so many temporary foreign workers who were reluctant to report any mistreatment to anybody because they were hoping that one day they could become a permanent resident or a Canadian citizen. And so in some cases, I was the first person that they had told. And they knew what was happening was completely wrong. It was against the regulations, but they were just worried that if they said anything to anybody, there would be these consequences and all their work would be for nothing. And so they were determined to endure whatever they needed to in order to get the permanent residence or Canadian citizenship for them, for their families. Like they were really playing the long game. But sometimes it's all for nothing anyways, because there's no guarantee that they would get permanent residence anyways. I'd say the biggest challenge for employers is how slow the program is. So everyone I spoke to said this was the slowest program you could ever imagine. And it was very difficult for them to use because if they need to hire someone, they need them usually like pretty soon, right? That's just how their business works. And so with it being so slow, it was difficult for them to plan. So if the program were quicker, I think that would just make it easier for the good businesses who are trying to use this properly, and also for the workers, right? So that they get to sign up for it, come and just make more informed decisions instead of just waiting around so long. And then for the workers, the biggest thing is the closed work permits. So I have had terrible jobs. Everybody I know has had at least a few terrible jobs, but you quit those jobs, right? And then you vote with your feet, and then the employer learns that, okay, no, you have to treat people a little bit more fairly or pay better or something, right? So I think the easiest, quickest change would be to switch from closed work permits to open work permits. It would just solve so many things. A closed work permit ties the employee to that particular employer. And so to use the program, the employer has to submit a successful application for what's known as an LMIA. That's a labor market impact assessment. And so it costs $1,000. It's pages of paperwork. And they have to show that no qualified Canadians will do this, and to create a plan for when the temporary foreign worker is done, then what are they going to do, right? So they're supposed to have sort of just some strategic human resource planning, right? But they can hire a temporary foreign worker because they have this particular permit. They have the LMIA. Temporary foreign worker can only work for them. And if they don't like it, they can't just quit on the spot and work for the competitor across the street. And so the employers like it because it feels like a guaranteed worker, right? So especially if they're in a high turnover industry like hospitality, tourism, restaurants, where people do quit all the time, it's really nice for them to feel like, okay, if I bring this person, yeah, it's really complicated and time consuming to get them, but once they're here, they will stay for 2 years and it's going to be probably a pretty good worker. So the businesses like that part of it. But the downside for the workers is they're kind of stuck, and they often don't have very much information about what the job is going to be like for real. So they have the contract. They can maybe through word of mouth find out something about what that city is like or what that company is like, but they're really going into it blind in a lot of cases. And so if it's not for them, too bad, they're kind of stuck. So when I first heard about the temporary foreign worker program, I thought, just cancel it. That there's so many problems with it, and there's so many Canadians who need work. So just cancel the program and it'll sort itself out somehow. I think in looking back, I think I was a bit naive to think that that would work. Just because so many businesses rely on these workers. But I think by reforming the program more than they've been doing, right? So I think all the tinkering they've been doing with the program has not really solved much of the underlying issues with the program. But if they made some more fundamental changes, then I think the program could be salvaged. And I think in essence, it would be making the temporary foreign worker program more like the international mobility program, and just giving employees the same rights that the other workers have. The book is named Enduring Work for two reasons. So on one hand, it's to emphasize that this work is enduring, right? The work is not temporary. Like many of these so-called temporary workers, they've come to Canada for several years, right? Like it's not a very short one-off work. Like this is, and when a temporary foreign worker leaves, they are often replaced by another temporary foreign worker, right? So the work is just enduring. But I also wanted to emphasize that the workers themselves, they endure a lot, and that the mistreatment that they endure, it's significant and cannot be minimized. And I think we need to keep their experiences in mind when we think about how we're going to manage the program in the future. So I was very interested in kind of the relationships, the working relationships between temporary foreign workers and Canadian employees. And I was curious to see how these relationships would unfold. And so when I started the project, I was asking a lot of questions about, so how do you guys really get along? And everybody got along fine. Honestly, it was really the issues that workers were having. It wasn't with their Canadian coworkers. That was always fine. It was, they were having a lot of issues with their company, the boss, the supervisor, the management. And the more I just talked to people and kept on talking to people, just the scope of the problems with the program, it just continuously shocked me. And so I just wanted to keep talking to more and more people just to understand better people's experiences with the program. So I'm hoping that when people read the book, that they will see the complexity of this program. And I think most people are a little bit familiar with different parts of the program. So maybe, for example, they understand a little bit about agricultural workers, or they've heard a little bit about labor shortages, but it's a vast program, and it touches on many people's lives. And I think from the book, I'm hoping people will have a deeper understanding of the nuances in the program, and that will allow us to make better choices about how the program is administered.